Hello, everyone. Welcome,
No.
welcome, welcome. So this is Confidence Through Cabaret, the podcast, and this is the end of season 1. 6
Oh my
months of
goodness.
podcasting, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. Right.
Right. So I'm Heather. This is Ryan, and we
Hello.
have loved having you here in Confidence Through Cabaret, the podcast.
Yes.
Go check out all of the podcasts, Confidence Through Cabaret, wherever you get your podcasts, and go and check out all of the amazing guests. But we wanted to take some time to just talk about the amazing contributions that people have shared with us over the past 6 months. And do you know that there are 37 podcasts?
Jeez.
I know. I
That's
know.
crazy.
So a
That's
weekly
crazy.
podcast, that should have been 26, but then we had extras, and we had
Yeah. Yeah.
we just love sharing all things confidence, and that was our mission, that was our theme, was just to really, find out what people do that informs confidence. So whether that's personal life, work life, or stage life. So do you remember our very first podcast, or the first episode we posted anyway?
I believe the very first episode we posted would have been with Fahim Taj.
It
Am I correct?
wasn't. It was the first one we recorded. It was.
That was the first one we recorded.
Yeah. And Fahim was talking about the importance of voice and commanding presence. And it was just, it was such a pleasure because we were on Fahim's podcast as well.
Yeah, the Limelight. Yeah. Which I believe won an award not so long ago.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and it was such a pleasure to get to know Fahim and really kind of learn from her many years of podcasting, and she learned so much about her voice because she listened to so many voices in her headphones as she's editing. That was just such a good thing. When we talk about Confidence Through Cabaret, we've always talked about taking up space, and we've talked about sharing your voice and sharing your messages. So it was such a great one to start with on our recording of the importance of voice. But our very first podcast that we ever posted, like the first episode, was Yadira Gonzalez Munoz.
Oh yes, of course, Yadira. Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
and Yadira's an amazing speaker as well. She's really great.
Yeah, so Yadira shared with us discovering our I Am. And we've written many articles for the I Am magazine as well, which is well worth checking out all of the articles there. And Yadira shared with us, kind of her story and overcoming obstacles.
Yeah, and Yadira's particular life story has been really she had to overcome a lot of adversity within, with very much that stacked constantly against her. Every time she seemed to get to one point, there was another issue, and they were really serious issues, and it's taken a lot of perseverance and courage and tenacity to get through. It was a really fantastic interview.
Yeah, it really was, and it's just such an inspiring story to know how to turn things around.
Yeah.
And then we went on and we had Julia Rugo.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
Julia is a great friend of the community as well, and we were talking all about checking in with ourselves and our inner alignment.
Yes.
And I think inner alignment with our world helps us to be able to take up space. Really, it's not about faking it. It's not about pretending that we feel great. It really is about kind of finding that what's within us and aligning that with our actions and just really checking in on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that opened up a lot of discussions within the community, if I remember correctly at the time, not least because we then were, off the back of that, obviously, if you've been watching the podcast, you know that we do the Confidence with Coffee, a sort of external part where we go through the lessons that we've kind of learned or our key bits of takeaway from each of these podcasts. But this opened up a lot of different discussions that kind of echoed throughout Confidence Through Cabaret for quite a while, really, about how to bring yourself in line with your own personal values, asking questions. In fact, you did a whole module, I think, but not a module, sorry, but a whole series of things a series of videos on the YouTube channel, all about like bringing your personal life into personal values into line with your work values, how those things tessellate, how those things come together, figuring out if you're in the right organization for you. It was a really interesting sort of set of discussions that got sparked off the back of that.
Yeah, it really was. And inner alignment is just such a worthy recurring theme to building confidence and coming into our own confidence through momentum.
Yes.
And then we had the amazing Patrick Alawa and Andy O. We had
so
much fun.
Technopreneurs. Yes.
Yes.
We had a lot of fun with Patrick and Andy. We've actually done their podcast as well. Was it twice? We did it twice, I think.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we went back and did like a catch up of what's going on, and their theme was about starting your business all over again. They both had successful working careers and businesses, and then to start all over again, because people said, well, it's all very well you talking about business, but you haven't had to start one in the climate that that people are starting to know. So they went, all right, accept it, which I love. And then they said, okay, let's do this, because that's what you and I did, right? We had our own businesses and careers, and then starting over again with online. We've had a lot of learning.
Yes, absolutely. It's been a real curve. And I think based on some of the discussions that we had at the time with Andy and Patrick, I think there's a lot of common threads that go through that experience for everybody. So if you're listening to this, do definitely check that out, especially if you're just starting a business. There's a lot of things that you'll hear echoed probably within your own experience. And you may be able to circumvent a few of those things by listening to that podcast. So there's things that you might not need to do that you are doing, that you then go, oh, actually, I may not need to do that because it didn't work for either of these people.
Yeah, exactly. And they've got some amazing guests as well that, that really share their business experience as well. Yeah. And I think not everybody in Confidence Through Cabaret wants to start a business or is starting a business, but even just in terms of building your own career within your employer, there's just so many amazing lessons from people who've started their businesses. Yeah. So then we talked to Geneva Livingston, Geneva Livingston is such a friend to us, like in a very personal way as well. Yeah. And at the time, Geneva had a business all about warrior coaching. And again, we came back to that theme of inner alignment and really kind of, inch by inch, we take the field, and we talked about what that means.
Yes.
I know that Geneva has gone on and extended her business and is now talking about, working through grief and, feeling the feelings. And I have so much time for that, because there's such a world of toxic positivity where we're not really supposed to feel. We're just supposed to smile our way through it. And so I love the direction that Geneva's taken. In fact, we need another conversation. We talked many times about having another conversation with Geneva. She just loves all over us. It's just such an infectious energy that she shares.
Yeah. Oh, it really is wonderful.
Yeah. And then we did a little bit of dreamscaping.
Oh my goodness. Yes, of course. The dreamscaping exercise was really exciting. It's really fun. In fact, I believe, am I right in thinking that the dreamscaping then turned into a full thing of, that became a masterclass, if I'm correct, as well? Yes.
So that's the amazing Amber Clyde, who is I love being part of her community. It's all about, she does a lot of work with yoga. She does a lot of work about getting clear on what we want, which is what dreamscaping is all about. And actually, if you check out that podcast episode, it's just so great talking about what dreamscaping is and how to do it. And then on the member side of confidencethroughcabaret.com, then you can check out the masterclass where Amber actually literally takes us through that exercise and how to do it and how to really get clear on what we want.
And Amber is a professional licensed yoga teacher as well. So there's a lot of stuff in there about how to get yourself into a place of stillness before you do those exercises. Because Amber runs Kaleidoscope Yoga. She did a lot of stuff to do with, there's a lot of information in there about how you get yourself into that space initially so that you can kind of find your path with that exercise. And she also shared a lot about her own personal journey, which was again just a really, like one of the things that I think has been really fun and really humbling about the experience of recording the podcast is how open people have been on their journey, either through their business journey or through their personal life. And it's really, really just great to be able to be featuring and hearing these stories coming from the people themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I would have thought before we started this podcast that, people's stories would be their own personal experiences. But what we found was there were so many parallels between people's stories, between our own stories or our own things that we struggle with, and our guests, or between guests. There are some real common themes. And so we very often feel when we're going through something that it's our own experience and we're alone in it, and we're just not. We don't need to be, and I think
absolutely.
Amber's work around, breathing and around really, kind of aligning our physical and mental state is just so beautiful.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Speaking of that, we then had Alice Zaffer. And Alice talked to us about movement and mindfulness and sensuality, touch, and we did a whole exercise, didn't we? We did like a whole piece of music and just moving to it and what that's like. How we experience her classes in that movement. And I think for me that was the hardest part about starting Cabaret was moving in a way that just allowed us to take up space. And I know you and I had the same kind of catch point, which was, okay, how am I supposed to move now? And it was like, oh no, we get to move if we want. And that exercise that is in the podcast is just such a rewarding thing to shut off that voice and just move.
Yeah. Because you don't have to be a performer or an artist to have that sensation or that realization. There's a lot of times when, because I'm not a dancer by any means. My method has always been through music, through singing and through hosting and stuff. So so approaching that on our level of a performer's level where we're like, how are we supposed to move? You also have the social script. So you don't need to be an artist to empathize with that. There's a social script in like, how am I supposed to move? How am I supposed to act? What am I supposed to think? What am I supposed to say? And when we kind of unpacked that later, it was like, oh, that's really interesting. And we talk about that in the podcast, if I remember correctly, as well, because we kind of were very honest about the fact that we both kind of went, how am I supposed to be doing this?
Yeah.
And it was like, no, that's not the thing.
No. It was just putting on music and letting our bodies just flow. So rewarding.
Yeah.
So rewarding.
Yeah, fully.
And then we had Akriti Kundu.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, the divine feminine.
Absolutely. And just all about the rewards of being delighted by life and finding that balance between the masculine energy of doing and driving and then being and creating and feeling.
Yeah.
It was just so beautiful. It's something I work on all the time. It's something that we've done a whole meditation series on, balancing the feminine energy. And I think a lot of times we don't embrace that because we're such a do kind of so it's such a beautiful explanation that Akriti gives us about the divine feminine, and her work is just so rewarding. And she's in Confidence Through Cabaret community often, kind of sharing what she's doing.
In fact, I believe that off that podcast, a number of people actually did work with Akriti.
Yes, they did. Yeah. And that's kind of, that was our vision, right? Was that, we wouldn't tell you how to, like, here's how you build confidence from, 1 to 10. It was kind of here are all different expressions of confidence, and then share that so that you can get in touch with the people that that would inspire you, or would be, you know, what you need at the moment. And that's what I love so much about collaborating with all of these people, because every single one of them I have so much time for. I'm active in their communities. I'm, you know, engaged in it. And, you know, particularly there's a lot of them have women's communities. So I know it's kind of, you know, come to me to get involved in. But I think, you know, their work is so rewarding, and they have just so much to say. And I just so appreciate having them in the community.
Yes.
And then we had Stephanie O'Day.
Oh, wonderful. Yes. God, it's really fun going through all of these.
It is, isn't it? We talked about slow cooking, slow living. And I can remember when we were first talking to Stephanie about, like, what would we talk about in a podcast? Like, how does slow cooking, slow living inform confidence? But of course it does.
And we were both like, of course it does.
Yeah.
Of course it does.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just all about, you know, being confident in our choices, because, you know, Stephanie said to make some business decisions that haven't necessarily been popular in terms of, you know, well, I could have made some money off of this, but it wasn't aligned.
Yeah.
So it was just so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what she does, you know. So and there's
that alignment.
Yeah. So then we had Emily Oliver, who I'm very much in touch with on LinkedIn and you know, and on all of the socials really. And Emily's a happiness practitioner, and was talking about how to experience joy and connection. And I learned so much from Emily's podcast, because we had to give each other feedback.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
I remember Emily saying, "Well, Heather, thank you for your feedback for Ryan. Let's try rephrasing that." And I was thinking, okay, all right, time to stop messing around and get real, and tell you how much I love you, and how I admire your work, and, you know, and there's so much joy in that. There's so much joy in expressing. Emily
gave a wonderful masterclass as well.
Yes, Emily gave us a whole masterclass on happiness coaching and what she does and the work that she does. And there's just so much information in there, all about, you know, what that means, how our negativity bias works, what that causes us to do, and how to overcome that.
Yeah.
And then we had a two-parter, which, because we couldn't stop talking, we have a few, because we don't edit the podcast, right? Like, I know some people edit the podcast, but we never wanted to cut anybody's story or anybody's work, you know, short. So we interviewed Amber Rose Washington in two parts, and so we talked about Amber Rose's journey, and we talked about, you know, navigating areas of her life and how she advocates for youth. And just such a fascinating story about, you know, how she came to where she is now.
Oh my God, yeah. You could have talked about that hours.
Oh, we did. That's why it was a two-parter, because it was just such an amazing story. Right. It was just such an amazing story. Yeah. Really, you know, so many great experiences, and so many, you know, moments of truth to sort of, you know, facing adversity and then going ahead with it, and some really tough life decisions and experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you did want to get more of an information, or a bit more information about Amber, there is Amber Rose Washington is available. Her book is available on Amazon, if I remember correctly. She's got a best-selling book. In fact, New York Times, was she a New York Times bestseller?
I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure.
A bestseller. I can't remember who it was exactly that gave the accolade, but I know that she did pretty well.
Stephanie O'Day had New York Times bestsellers in
That's
Slow
right.
Cooking. But I know Amber actually have Amber Rose's book, because it was being released at the time. Yeah.
That's right. Of course.
Yeah. So it's just such a worthwhile read, and just such an inspiring story. Like, you just sit there and go, okay, my life's been fairly easy. You know? And so what am I complaining about? And so if you take some of the lessons from inner alignment, you take some of the lessons around happiness, and you take some of the lessons around, you know, the areas that our guests that we've mentioned so far have mentioned, then you apply those to adversity, then, you know, Amber Rose Washington just gave us such an uplifting moment of saying, you know, you can do this, and especially advocating for youth.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So Eleanor Dooley is our next guest. It was all about nutrition. And I'm laughing because I can remember before we pressed record, I said, okay, Eleanor, I just want to say I don't like vegetables. So can we not talk about vegetables? Like, if we're going to talk about nutrition,
I'm not going to make you do something you don't want to do. I'm not going to make you eat something you don't want to eat.
But it was about it was all about giving you grace, and it was all about, you know, the fad diet culture, and you know the thing that we constantly say about Cabaret is that it is for everybody, and feeling good in your body, even if it's not how you want it to be, it's feeling good where you are and growing from there. You know, we always say start from where you're strong, and that's just such a great example of start from where you're strong, start from what you do appreciate, and then you can move from there, you know, and getting out of that fad diet culture.
Yeah, exactly. And all this kind of like toxic dialogue between you know, the right bodies and the right diets and the right this and the right that. It was really interesting, especially because I think, if I remember correctly, Eleanor's own practice was very much about the individual experience of how their bodies react to very specific things, as well as how they mentally react to those things as well. So it was a really tailored, like, holistic experience, and her talking about her experiences of that diet culture and the gym fitness culture and all of that sort of stuff was really illuminating.
Yeah, it really was.
And
then we followed on with Saru Gupta.
Yes.
Who talked about the pressures of being a busy woman and the toll that can take, and you know, and how important movement in our body is, and listening to our body, which is ever changing, right? So not just doing like a one-off thing. I mean, you know, these exercises that people have shared with us, you know, they're not just like you do dreamscaping and then you do the happiness practice, and then
they all build. You
make some nice food, and then that's it. It's really about kind of keeping in touch with that, and it's really about, you know, because there's the toxins in our bodies and the toll it takes to be, you know, under pressure all the time, to be so busy. It was so illuminating, and Saru also shared her story with us, you know, very candidly and openly, and I know her business has gone on, you know, from strength to strength, about really getting deeper into our inner child and our programming, and you know, the things that you know, build toxicity.
Yes, absolutely.
And then Deborah Atella.
Deborah.
Deb, I'm on her. I'm watching her lives every week in her community. We talked about trusting her intuition, and you know, she talked about, you know, buying a business, but her intuition told her not to, and she thought, well, that's just fear. And you know, I'm just finding that voice that says this is intuition, this is fear, and they're different.
Yeah, absolutely. And also how to not just to distinguish those things, but to have the courage to stick to that, you know, based on your life lessons, kind of thing. Like, you know, there was a lot to do in that podcast about not only what happens when you don't listen to that voice of knowing that you have inside you, but then also how you pick yourself up afterwards, how you then build onto that, and how you then create your own sort of career and your own, you know, your own happiness from that as well. Really have a lot of time for Deb. Really fantastic speaker.
Yeah, really fantastic speaker, and she started her own podcast since our
as
well.
Yeah, because you've appeared on that, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, our stories and our messages are so aligned, which is just such a beautiful thing, because that, again, that's the whole point of you know, collaborating. You know, not just having guests that just disappear and then that's it, but you know, they're in our community, we're in their community, and we're sharing, you know, our lessons all the time, and our struggles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. So if I say to you, Amanda Farrat.
Oh, Amanda, you played tricks on me. You played tricks on me.
Okay, so Amanda,
I know where this is going.
among other things, is a badass EFT practitioner. So,
Yes.
so we talked about tapping, and
I didn't know what it was.
and I remember you going, but how do you do that remotely? Because I mean,
I assumed it was like a massage practice. Like, I assumed it was a physical, hands-on practice, and it is, but for yourself.
And that made me die because I gave me full permission to like hit you or tap you.
Yes, yeah. Well, you think it gave you full permission to do that. That's how you interpreted it.
I will.
That is how you interpreted it.
But actually, it was about staying true to yourself, and
yes.
you know, and Amanda actually, we in that podcast, if you go check out that episode, you know, she actually literally takes us through the tapping practice, which I have not forgotten. You know, and I know, you know, Amanda's story is, you know, lots of ups and downs as well. And, you know, feeling comfortable and feeling good in our body. And then when she found EFT, then, you know, that transformation of, you know, really finding her passion was just such a wonderful story. And that's what we all would want, right? Is to find our passion.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, just another engaging, wonderful, funny, talented speaker. Just a really, really just a wonderful podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so if I say to you coloring.
Oh, color me hopeful.
Yeah. Erica Bowen.
Yes.
Erica talks about hope. And what that means, and the small things that you can do today to, you know, to connect with your hope. And, you know, we talked about pleasure, and we did coloring, and I realized that I so most people wouldn't think that I'm somebody who follows the rules. But I found, because Erica sent us a coloring page, and we colored while we chatted, and I realized that I had to make the leaves of the flowers all green, and, you know, like there's a color code to things, and I had to follow the code, and I had to stay within the lines. And I thought, did not know I was somebody to follow the rules.
Right. Exactly. But, you know, again, that was and again, there was actually a masterclass off the back of Erica's wonderful podcast interview that takes you further and deeper into that process. So if you have a chance to go and listen to that podcast, there is a further option to actually go deeper into it and really get into some of the practices in there. And Erica, as I say, it's Dr. Erica Bowen. She has a really fantastic because she's a clinical psychologist, she has a really interesting depth of knowledge there about the processes that she's talking about. So that the masterclass gets really into it. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic one, actually. We've had her as a guest on a number of occasions now. Yeah,
we have, because we featured her live as well, and we also, like you say, we have a masterclass on confidencethroughcabaret.com, which is just such a beautiful. Yeah. And Erica and I do quite a lot of Clubhouse together. You know, I always feel ever more confident because I have Erica there in the room with me, co-hosting in Clubhouse, because I know that when somebody says, well, the language that we use with male and female, it's not really that different. And then she just goes, actually it is. And I think, oh.
That is deeply incorrect as a statement.
Yeah. So I love the insights that she shared with us. You know, just from her, you know, previous career as an academic, and then moving into her coaching business and Colored Me Helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so then before that, or following that, I should say, we had another two-parter, and again, well, actually, that was kind of my fault this time, because I did not understand. I just couldn't get it into my body. So we were talking about holding space and how do you hold space.
Oh, yes.
And that was
yes.
And I was saying,
yes,
I feel warmth in my hand. And she was saying, okay, well, normally you don't feel anything when you're holding space because it's not a thing. So it's about releasing. That took me about half an hour
Yeah.
to go, wait, what do you mean you release tension? What do you mean that
Oh my God, that was my favorite moment. What do you mean you release the tension?
And then she was
That
saying,
was
well,
just a great moment.
I mean, think back to when you were a child. You didn't, you didn't feel the pain in your body, and I was going, no, I did. I'm always on tension. So we did
Janice is a really fascinating interview. Yeah, a really fascinating interview. She runs My Body Couture and does a lot of stuff about making space within your body and how that allows you to not only release tension, but then to kind of to allay some of the issues you may be experiencing with connect, because our bodies are so connected with our minds, how that then allows you to kind of release, I won't say release ailments, because that's a very grand statement with a lot of implications. But what I mean is it allows you to kind of get more in tune with your body and allow things to kind of, sometimes long-standing issues you can start unwrapping them and getting to the core of what's causing them. So a really interesting practitioner.
Yeah, very interesting techniques, and she talks about the schools of thought and the schools of practice that she takes her work from. Which is well worth checking out. Just to kind of think about how we release and what it feels like to be pain free in our body, which I'm still working on. Still working on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we have it is a process. It's a constant practice. All of this is about practices, and that's the beautiful thing about the podcast is that we can pick the practice that we most need in the moment, and we can keep practicing that, and then just keep working within that, and then move on to another practice if that serves us.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we talked about what pleasure is and the transformation with Heather Wild-Smith.
Oh, Heather Wild, she's wonderful.
Yes, we had a lot of fun.
We've had a bunch of conversations with Heather since, and actually I spoke to Heather yesterday really briefly. Again, a wonderful speaker with a great deal of experience, talking about her own experiences of sex work and sex positivity, talking all about bodily choices, how those choices are informed by the cultures that we live in, the dominant cultures that we live in, how we push back against those things. Really, really interesting. Especially for us, because that was one of the things that we'd always wanted to talk about, and that was part of Magic of Pleasure Month, wasn't it?
Wow, I love that theme.
Yeah, that was our final interview of Magic of Pleasure Month, wasn't it? Yeah, because we really went in on that one. That was a fun interview, because I mean that was something that we when we started Confidence through Cabaret, one of the things that we were talking about was sex positivity, and continues to be, but we wanted to put a focus on it for that month, particularly. It was a really interesting and evocative interview. Really interesting.
Yeah, it was, and we've done some Clubhouse rooms as well now around that subject, and it's very interesting talking about what pleasure in the body is about. In fact, we've talked about pleasure in our body in different ways in different podcasts. And just before we go on to another guest who was talking about pleasure, we had Cindy Huang, who was the creative witch, or who is the creative witch.
The creative witch, yes. Absolutely. Cindy is again another really interesting speaker. She was talking a lot about various different disciplines within the world of tarot, mysticism, her own practices and definitions of the creative witch, which was very interesting.
Yeah, very, very, and interesting. She combines her kind of her witchcraft practices as a creative witch, and then also combining with anthropology and how those worlds collide.
Yes, of course. Yeah, very interesting, especially going through the very scientific rigors and academic rigors of anthropology, and testing that with her own mystical practices was really very fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So back to our Magic of Pleasure Month, we had Rochelle Menzies, and we again did 2 parts.
Oh, that is right. Yes.
So that was about pleasure. That was about sensuality, sexuality, and also about consent.
Oh, fully. Yes, very much so. Yeah. And she's, again, Rochelle is a qualified sexual educator,
Yes.
based in Australia. Am I correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And her work is often to do with those boundaries of consent and those lines of consent, and how we inform that and how we talk about it, and negotiate with our partners and all of that sort of stuff. It's really, Rochelle, again, is another really fantastic interview. Not because I say that like we did such a good job. No, what I mean is Rochelle's experience and discussion within that frame was really fascinating, especially coming from the world that we do as cabaret performers, where we talk a lot about the lines of consent, and we talk a lot about what's acceptable and what's not, because those discussions happen in our industry a lot. But yeah, Rochelle is just great, really great.
Really great, really great. Yeah, so that's a two-parter, and that is like go check it out. Particularly if you wanted to have a think about your sensuality and sexuality and what pleasure and consent are about.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked to Becca Rich, another one of our master classes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's
all about holistic time, right?
Holistic time management. Yes. And so the podcast, we focused on defining your time by your values. So how you spend your time according to what your values in life are. And so there are some fantastic exercises and information in the masterclass and confidencethroughcabaret.com in the member suite. But in the podcast, then Becca, in fact, we did a whole Becca week. I mean, we did
the week of Becca.
We did, and and Becca and I did a clubhouse as well. That was great, but it's just thinking about time as energy and thinking about how we spend our time, and that it better align with our values, because otherwise, what are we really doing? So she goes into defining what your values are and how you're spending time, and doing a to-don't list, and not measuring yourself by your task list and how much you got done. And if you combine that with Acrides, divine feminine, and really kind of feeding into the feminine, it is the whole thing is just this this just such a complete package.
Yes, I totally agree. And all I have is two words to say: Isabella Kronos.
Isabella Kronos. Thank you so much, Becca Rich. So Genesis Amaris Kemp.
Oh, wonderful.
How to find your voice in inclusion and diversity. And
yes.
All about her story, all about, where her work came from, about her. She also has a book.
Oh, yes. Chocolate Drop in Corporate America.
Yes. What a good memory.
Well, that was again another. All the conversations have been great, so I probably can just stop saying that. But again, Genesis was a really interesting guest, and talking about inclusion and diversity, especially with her experience of being, of having to deal with very corporate America, working within the oil and gas industry, and lobbying for herself. And that was the real thing about this. It was all about showing up for yourself, and how you do that, and how you organize, and then how you can further extend that to those around you. I think it was a really great takeaway from the interview.
Yeah, and a really important message around diversity and inclusion. Just such an important topic.
Yeah, fully agree. Agree.
And then we went to Being Our Own Best Friend with Sarah Meredith.
Oh, yes. Lovely. Yes. Lovely section. Yeah, that was a really nice one.
And how we treat ourselves, and is showing others how to treat us, and how to be able to rely on ourselves as our own best friend. Yeah. Just a great analogy.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah.
And then right before that, right after that, I should say, we had Rosa Alejandra.
Oh, Rosa, yes. Rosa and the Bitch Protocol, right? We did a whole talk on this. Yeah.
You need to love yourself.
Yes, yeah. Oh, Rosa's story again. Rosa shared a really wonderful story with us about where she kind of gone through, because she was a dancer as well, and continues to dance, if I remember correctly. but I'd had to deal with, severe pain and a lot of difficulty and loss and struggle, and figure out how she could do things like shadow work to kind of come back for herself and advocate for herself again. Yeah, Rosa's story was really fascinating.
Yeah, and Rosa talks a lot about some of the things that we talk about around mirror work and around really seeing yourself, looking into the mirror and really seeing you.
Yes.
Yeah, which is hard to do. It's a great podcast to have a look at the exercises in there as well. As well as if you go into the Confidence Through Cabaret community on Facebook, the All Caps Challenge is still up in the events.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some mirror work in there as well.
Yes, absolutely. It was a whole chunk of it in the All Caps.
Yeah, and I loved Rosa's energy. It was just so infectious and just so aligned with the craziness of you and I. Yeah.
What do you mean?
And then we followed up with another two-parter, which was Winanda van Delft, who was talking about
yes, of course,
mindset and our relationship with food.
Yes,
and loving our body, finding a part of our body that we enjoy or that we appreciate, and building from there. So start from where you're strong.
Yeah, and again, another exercise in learning how to deprogram yourself from societal cultural notions of what is and what isn't acceptable by a specific standard that somebody picks out that has no bearing on you or your reality, that you're expected to follow for no good reason. Yeah.
And Winanda takes us through the 7 whys in part 2 about kind of really getting to your why and what you're doing. Which is something that I use in corporate work for finding root cause for problems and solving problems and so on, but really kind of applying that to finding your own why, which is lovely.
Yes.
And then we had Anne Diamond.
Oh, Anne's wonderful. Not only an EFT tapping practitioner, but also a wonderful musician as well, an artist. And Anne, I think, came on and because she did the podcast with us, but she also did a community segment as well and took us through an EFT tapping exercise with us, which again is not a form of massage and is also not an excuse for you to start hitting me. You don't get to do that. No.
Well, I mean, so Anne talks about the various range of tool in her toolkit that she uses in her work in this podcast. And you're right, she did do live with us, and it went down so well in the community.
Yeah, it was a really fun section. Really fun segment.
Do that in our Spring Clean Challenge, which is also in the Confidence Through Cabaret community on Facebook. Which was such fun around, kind of really finding what it is that you need and releasing things that are not serving us. And is such a great friend in the community always.
Absolutely.
Just always stuck in and always happy to share. And she didn't explicitly say that I couldn't hit you, just saying.
Oh my God.
I mean, okay. I know, it's shocking. And then someone we've had as a recent guest in the community as well, which is Sarah or Chacha Majida.
Oh yes, wonderful. The artpreneur.
Yes, and she's a coach, but as are many of our guests, but specifically coaching artists and around mindset and kind of really finding what our blocks are and what our limiting beliefs are, and how to have the mindset that we can really dive into to be successful.
Yes. Yes, absolutely agree. Yeah, Sarah's a really interesting, again, another really interesting and exciting guest. And going through her, she was actually doing a whole course at the time based specifically for artists to use to build their confidence and to build their sort of skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we had the lovely Nazma.
Oh, Nazma Khatun, yes.
Yes, and Nazma's an NLP practitioner and really kind of delves into some of the beliefs that we've held since childhood.
Yes.
And in fact, since we've spoken, Nazma has had a baby.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
really girl.
oh, congratulations, Nasma. If you're watching this, congratulations. I'm so
Yeah.
excited for you.
And I've also been on Clubhouse with Nazma before, and you know, it's always such a pleasure to hear her take on, you know, inner child work, and you know, and really bottoming out where those beliefs come from, and then how we can reprogram using some of the techniques of NLP. Just beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then more recently, this in the last couple of weeks, we had Martha Mock.
Oh, wonderful. Yes.
Gifts of Vulnerability. Oh,
yes.
and just all about being a super confidence coach, and actually going from being, you know, someone who was, you know, planning and involved in weddings to complete pivot to becoming a coach around, you know, accessing our vulnerability, being able to share her own vulnerability, and what those gifts are that we take from that.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
And then our last one, which will be the final week of June before our final week of June in the season wrap up, was Samantha Stelk, which was really sharing with us around self-love and around sexual empowerment and our relationship with our body. And, you know, we have a masterclass from the gorgeous River Starlight. Why did I say River Phoenix? Oh, it's because that's a famous name. River Starlight. Sorry, River.
Yeah.
And you know, River shared a beautiful masterclass with us all about deep breathing. And in the podcast with Samantha, you know, she really went into how powerful that is and what that means, and you know, and what self-love is about, and what sexual empowerment is really about, and our relationship with our body, you know. And that's such an important thing when you're talking about something like, you know, Cabaret, or when you're talking about how we apply the principles of Cabaret. You know, feeling good in our body is essential. You know, and finding our pleasure, and knowing where our boundaries are in our physical body, as well as in our mental state, as well as in our, you know, kind of what we want in our success path. It just, the whole thing, you know, comes together in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
So thank you to all of the guests.
Thank you for everyone. Yeah, for everyone who's listened, to everyone who's downloaded the podcast, to everyone who's been involved across the board. We couldn't have done it without you, so thank you so much. It's been a real wild ride. It's been a wild ride.
It has been a wild ride. Check out YouTube. The Confidence with Coffee segment is Ryan and I talking about our takeaways from those podcasts, and really kind of, you know, we've wanted the podcast to be about airing, you know, our guests' stories and messages and propositions and passions, and so the Confidence with Coffee, you know, segment on YouTube on Confidence Through Cabaret is really you know, kind of what we learned from it, and what we take, and what stuck for us, and what meant the most in terms of our own messages and alignment, and how we connect with those messages. So go and check that out on YouTube. Also, all of the podcast guests now have a Vodcast up, which is the video version of the podcast. So you can, if you prefer a video version, you can do that. If you prefer an audio version or on the go, then you can go to anywhere you get your podcast. You can go to Confidence Through Cabaret, and you will find all of these guests. Thank you to all of them. Thank you to you, Ryan. It has been so much fun to do.
It's been so much fun
together. And I just have a few questions for you. If you were going on stage and you needed to take one prop with you, what would it be?
Well, I don't take a prop on stage with me.
Yes,
I am my own prop.
I know, but if you were, what would you take?
It would obviously be a dead rose. It would be one single dead rose. It would clearly be one single dead rose.
I love that for you.
Absolutely.
And if you want to see video footage of Ryan Francis with the dead rose, check out All Caps Challenge in body tracing module.
Yes.
In the Facebook community, Confidence Through Cabaret, because we get to see that dead rose.
Yes.
And if you were reinventing yourself, what would your stage name be?
Ooh. I think I might call myself Fontanelle.
Oh, love that for you. A little bit of tapping in there.
Right. Yeah, a little bit of tapping in there. That's why I chose it.
I love this for you, Fontanelle.
I like the idea of the name because I think it's like, because obviously it's the soft spot. I like the idea of the idea of having something that you can kind of imbibe information through. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Plus Fontanelle. Welcome to the stage, Fontanelle.
Amazing, amazing. And what is your favorite lesson? Not necessarily from the podcast. What's your favorite life lesson?
Ooh, my favorite life lesson. I think that would probably be a bit of a motto that we've adapted many a time, which is never apologize, never explain. And that's, you know, that was first taught to me by Chise Laveau, and I think that's something that's, you know, has always been kind of embedded into me. The only other thing that I would say has been one of the big things would be boundaries.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
I had to say the never apologize, never explain, but boundaries. Yeah, that was the entirety of last year's lessons, and will probably be the lessons that I have to continue to relearn throughout my life. Yeah.
Beautiful.
What about yourself?
Beautiful.
If you had to go straight onto a stage right now, what would be your prop?
I mean, heels, always heels.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just always heels. And I know that doesn't sound like a prop, but it is a prop. I feel powerful. I feel strong. And also because I'm fairly flexible, I like being able to grab the heel and just.
Right. You know, use it as leverage. Just like,
use it to pull my leg over my head.
Right.
So heels. And I have to remind myself that though the power and the strength that I feel with that is available to me any time.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And what would your performer's name be?
I mean, I have so many. I know, love Chamomile.
Chamomile. I love Chamomile.
Chamomile was one that we started with a very long time ago.
Yes,
and when we first started this, we wanted to do a YouTube channel just about being horrible, hateful critics. So I'm gonna say Chamomile, although I just have so many. I think Chamomile is just kind of sour and strange.
She was wonderfully sour. I love Chamomile.
and fairly cynical.
And difficult. Just difficult. I loved Chamomile.
Yes, I love Chamomile as well. Yeah.
And of course, finally, what's your greatest lesson?
Control the controllables.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. I get it.
That's got me through a lot of stuff. It's like, what can I control and what do I need to let go? Because if I have no control over it, then I need to let it go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's been a wild ride, season 1.
Oh my God, it's been a wild ride. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone for being with us. And it just remains for me to say, go check out the podcast on Confidence Through Cabaret. Check out the socials, Confidence Through Cabaret. All things are Confidence Through Cabaret, except for Clubhouse, which is at Heather YBYWYS. And the club on Clubhouse is Confidence and Attitudes. And our Twitter handle at YB. YW. YS. Which stands for, Ryan?
It is your body, your world, your stage.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.